Hello, everyone. My name is Iwane, and I'm the founder of Minds Over Melanin. Welcome to the special series, Reflections in Color, Celebrating Journeys to Wellness, where we take an intimate view at different experiences in life within the mental illness spectrum. Today, we have our very first guest.
Alrighty, well, so good evening, everyone. My name is Kenny Goudy. I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, born and raised. I currently reside in Phoenix, Arizona. Today, I will be talking about my story regarding my overcoming of suicide from 8 years ago in 2012. And then I will also be discussing the importance of suicide awareness as well.
Hi, Kenny. Thank you so much for joining us. You are the first guest for Reflections in Color, Celebrating Journeys to Wellness. Welcome. We will be discussing suicide awareness because September is Suicide Awareness Month. And I just appreciate your willingness to express your vulnerability and honesty to support the wellness journey for other people. First, I would like to learn about your understanding of mental health. Like growing up, did you have any exposure to it, any experiences with it? Did you hear anything about it?
Absolutely. So, growing up, to answer your question, I really didn't have any previous too much knowledge in regards to mental health. I never really was exposed to it at a young age in terms of learning the foundation of it. However, growing up, I was able to experience both sides of mental illness and mental wellness
Okay.
growing up. And so I grew up in a two parent family home growing up. So I was one of those lucky kids to be able to be raised by both parents. So, however, it wasn't never really like glitter and gold growing up, even though I had both parents in my life growing up. And so I grew up pretty much in a verbal abusive home growing up. And so I experienced a lot of trauma, more so on a psychological and mental standpoint, based off the words that were spoken to me growing up. And so there would be words like, Kenny, you won't be in life. You should not listen to no other people's advice but yourself. It was a lot of sort of kind of physical abuse on my part due to just the psychological lack of having mental stability of how to handle my anger.
Okay.
And so there were times where, I would punch walls or punch a door or, shut down emotionally and cry and just never really understanding the mental part of it. I was just going through the emotional piece of it and not really understanding the mental capacity behind that. And so I experienced a lot of that through my teenager years from pretty much 13 until I went to college. And so that's pretty much what I experienced from an illness standpoint. So it allowed me to feel shut down. It allowed me to not feel confident in my own abilities at a young age. And it also allowed me to just not shut down, but shut out. So I grew up as an isolated kid for the most part, and based off of what I was going through, there'll be times where I just close the door in my room, and that was that, and I never left the room. Just based off of the things that were spoken to me because of embarrassment, and I kind of felt like I didn't have anyone to talk to at that time.
Okay.
So that's what I experienced from that standpoint. Now, from a mental wellness standpoint, when I was 17 years old, I started going to church. You know what I mean? It was just kind of out of curiosity at the time.
Okay.
And I met my mentor at 17 years old. And so, from a physical, not a physical, but from a mental wellness standpoint, I was able to hear things that was never spoken to me before. Kenny, there's greatness inside of you. You have all the tools and capabilities to make it in this life. I believe in you. You'll be a great person someday. Things of that nature was new for me. And so for me, it was like a whirlwind of a new experience of being able to say to myself, like, wow, like somebody's speaking these positive things in my life that I never heard of before, in a positive light. like continuously. And so it allowed me to grow as a teenager. It allowed me to grow as a person from a natural and spiritual standpoint as well. So the more that I surrounded myself around teenagers my age that were living the opposite life of what I was living or experiencing, allowed me to excel a lot quicker than most people around my age at that time.
Mm.
And so my mentor was the reason why I decided to go to college and attend Marquette University because he believed in me. And so it was like, I felt like his words matched what I was desiring that was empty in my life back then. And so just allow me to read on mental wellness at the time and understanding like there's greater that's in within myself than I didn't know that I had. And so, it allowed me to have a job. It allowed me to volunteer in elementary schools, to tutor when I was a senior in high school. And so it allowed me to be exposed to greater strengths that I never knew I had within myself. So those are a few experiences that I've dealt with back then.
Thank you for taking the time to explain that. I think the parallels you experience are fascinating. One key theme that I kind of want to pull out from that is the environment. It was so influential to you on both sides of the spectrum. When you were in a verbally abusive household, or you're encountering unhealthy behaviors and patterns, you reflected that, right? So you
Absolutely.
internalized it and then you brought it back out. And then when you encountered a different type of scenario where it was healthy and nurturing and supportive and positive and uplifting, again, you internalize that and you push
Yeah.
that out. Um, I don't think people realize how much power is in their social circles, right? Their environment as a whole. And as children, we really can't do much about that because where we are is where we are. But one thing I would like people to know that as adults, we have more control over the people we allow in our lives, over the people we interact with on a regular basis, and the environments that we choose to be in. Because as you just shown, it's so powerful and it can either bring you down or it can bring you up, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for showing that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm so happy you had that mentor and that environment that was able to kind of carry you through. Because I know when I met you at Marquette, you were uplifting Kenny, positive Kenny, you were like a big brother to me. And to know that you had that journey within such a short time, it takes my breath away.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we still talk to this day. And the more that you hear about my story along this interview, you'll be able to understand why he has such an impact in my life. So,
The power of mentorship. It's the gift that keeps
agree.
giving, right? It doesn't
Yep.
end. Okay, so
Yep.
let's fast forward to close to the present. Let's kind of talk about why we're here today, which is the suicidal thoughts you're having. So, to the best of your ability, I would like you to think back to when the thoughts started coming. For some people, it's hard for them to identify that specific point. So you don't have to be super specific. But to the best of your ability, what was happening in your life, employment wise, relationship wise, financially, etc. Because so many different factors can influence, how we, navigate our experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, around 8 years ago, I was ending a marriage. I was in a scenario where I was going through a divorce at the time, and I remember just having that last conversation at the time revolving around divorce. And I remember just leaving. We met at a Starbucks, and I just remember leaving the location, and then automatically my spirit dropped, my mental stability dropped, all these negative thoughts of what was told to me as a youngster started creeping back into my mind mentally. And so, you know, from a feeling standpoint, I felt empty. I felt like um, I had no reason to live anymore. Like I had no purpose. Um, and that I just didn't have any desire to do anything. And so I just remember feeling worthless, um, having negative thoughts that were, like I said, spoken to me from past trauma as well. And so it was just that voice in my mind of like, wow, everything that was told to me when I was young, it's like right at this moment, like everything that was said negatively is right at this moment, at this time. And so that's the only thing that I kept going through my mind as far as like, man, this is repeating a repeating cycle. Um, and so, it was one of those things where it felt like it was death. Like people say when you divorce someone or when somebody passes, for you as a recipient of that, you feel like
Mhm.
it's another death. Like you literally lose someone that knows you, that's close to you, etc. And so it literally for me it felt like death, like, and also that I was healed from the past traumas. And so it was a combination of that being reincarnated in my mind, and then just also going through the emotions in the beginning um, from a mental illness standpoint. And so it was kind of a mixture of the two. And at that time, it was like, what do I do? And I remember like being in the act of it, and I remember just I was just angry, very enraged, very lost. Um, I was psychologically out of it, and I remember going to these railroad tracks, and I remember just sitting in my car in the middle of the railroad tracks at the time, and there was a train that was coming about. I don't know, it's about maybe 100 feet. So all of a sudden, I met my mentor I was just telling you about. He called and he said, I sensed something wrong with you, what's going on? Mind you, we never talked that morning. And so he sensed all the way from Milwaukee all the way to Arizona that something was going on.
Wow.
And, I was on the phone with him again. This is where I am from a mental standpoint, broken, emptiness, feeling like worthless, like there's no life worth living for myself. But here he comes in the picture, starts speaking life to me again.
Mm.
Telling me things of like, your life is not defined by divorce. You're not defined by your past. Just think about all the teenagers that you impacted over the years. Just think about the people that you touched in your life. And are you willing to give all that up from something that you're going through? And so he was able to pretty much speak a lot of life into me, however, through perspective of being able to remind me of the past achievements that occurred throughout my life in the past in
Mhm.
such a short time. And so, obviously the tears started falling. I started feeling you know, like I'm a really great person. And I have a purpose to live on this earth. So I eventually went over the hump, the railroad tracks, the gates went down, train went past. It was nothing but dust for like 45 minutes, just a big cloud of dust everywhere, like a dust storm. I don't know if you ever experienced a dust storm before, but it's pretty much like a tornado without rain. It's just all dust, just sand. And I remember right after that moment, he instructed I get help. So I immediately went to my doctor that was in the city that I was residing in at the time. I went into the check-in office. I didn't have an appointment. I just went in. They said, "How may I help you?" I said, "I just attempted to commit suicide." And I remember they were rushing from the back. They were rushing from the back and immediately um, took me to the back of the office. Was asking me a lot of questions, psychological questions, what was going on. I was telling them what was going on. And I remember, they were said, I want you to I'm going to find you a therapist. And so from that standpoint, the same day. I got assigned a therapist that same day, and I remember visiting like the same day. It's a lot of events that happen in a 1 day span. So I remember just like visiting. Then she instructed that I take short term disability. So I ended up doing that, which was a brutal process because it was like I have to submit things every week or every day actually to my old job at the time. Um, then I went back to the doctor like a week later, and he prescribed me medications of like antidepressant pills, and also to get my appetite back because from a week's point of time, I was 160 pounds. So I lost all this weight because I wasn't eating again because I wasn't psychologically there. Still, it took a process. I didn't. I was basically in a dark room a lot. I didn't leave much at all. My mentor stuck by my side pretty much the whole time during that stage of my life, and so um, that's basically what I ended up doing, getting help twice a week in therapy and in counseling. Um, what I learned through that process, though, it allowed me to express my feelings a lot. I remember the first meeting I ever had, I just cried the whole time. Like I couldn't even get anything out. Um, because I was just going through this whole psychological cycle of just what emptiness really felt like. It was something that I never experienced before in my life. And so, it was just that feeling of feeling worthless. It's something that I don't wish on anybody to experience or to have in their life. And so, again, it allowed me to share my feelings. It allowed me to do things that I love again, as far as like recreational activities. It allowed me to get away from the environment. I was able to do a missions trip because my therapist knew at the time that I love to help people. And so she was able to help me out, take a mission trip to Mexico and volunteer to help less fortunate. So, that brought a big smile to my face because I love impacting other people. And so that experience alone was like, oh my gosh, like I haven't done this in so long and it felt so good for me. And I was very appreciative of that. And um, lastly, it allowed me to work on my overall self, to be able to have these life experiences, writing self-help things to me, words of affirmation, reading books on self-worth, reading books on overcoming the mentalness of your mind, the battlefield of your mind, and being able to have these exercises that help me develop myself. And, it allowed me to slowly progress in building myself back up. So those were the things that I dealt with at that time in that moment.
I just want to say I am so happy you're still here.
Appreciate that.
I want to take that moment that I'm happy somehow your mentor got that feeling and called you. I'm so happy you're here, and you would have been very missed.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You said a lot that I want to unpack because I think people will need to hear it. And I think I'm gonna work backwards, starting with what you first said. So the benefits of therapy, right? So many benefits. So one thing you said is it was a release. The first day you went, you just cried. And you said, I couldn't get anything out, but you actually were getting things out. That pain,
Right.
the shame, disappointment, all of that was running out of your body. And at the time, that's the only way you were able to communicate. And it was an effective communication because you were dumping a lot of things that you've been holding on.
Yep.
Another one is just skills, right? How do I confront these thoughts, right? Because we all have them. That's the part that people don't understand. I think they think certain people have certain kind of thoughts, but thoughts don't discriminate. They're everywhere, right? And when they present themselves to you, what do you do about it? And that's one thing that you can learn from therapy. And another thing is support, encouragement. Like you said before with your mentor, and the support environment you had is an extension of that. And this person, they have ultimate positive regard. So that's therapist speech. And what that means is we see you and the beauty in you. And that beauty may have flaws, but doesn't take away from that. And we see that with every misstep, there was a good intention. There was a lesson to be learned, and there's a desire to be better than we were the day before. And so that's one thing, is that if you don't have anyone positive in your life, you can find that in a therapist, because that's what we're there for, right?
Yep.
To kind of build you up, remind you of all the amazing things that you do and who you are. And I love that she really got you back to where you started, right? You love to give back, you love to volunteer, you love church, mission trip, right? It's all those wonderful things bundled together. Sounds like she was really, really helpful for you.
Absolutely. Yep. She was excellent.
Another thing you brought up is some of the barriers to healthcare. But that will be a conversation for another series. But that is one sad tale of this story, is that everyone would not have that opportunity to take short-term disability. And as a field, it is our responsibility to help figure that out. How can we convince employers that this is important enough to be in their policies to support this person? Because even like you said, even though you had the access, it was still a hang up. And the thing is, this person is going through something tumultuous, and then they still have to turn around and put in paperwork every couple of days, right? Instead of focusing on their healing. And so that's something we need to do better as a field. We have to figure it out. I'm not sure what the answer is, but that is something that we need to look into.
Absolutely.
Another thing you brought up was about when your mentor called and you were sitting on the train tracks, right? You may not realize, but that was a plan. Because when people have suicidal thoughts, clinically, from the side of a therapist, we look at it within several different lenses. The first one is, do you have the thoughts, right? But even in the thoughts, we try to pull it apart. Is it you just want to die, but you're not going to do anything about it? Or are you more active in it, like, no, I'm going to do something about it, right? And then even then, that's a different level from, this is how I'm going to do it, right? Like, I'm going to get a gun, or I'm going to go to the train tracks, or I'm going to get some pills, right? That's a plan, right? And then there's an intent. That's another level. Because people can still have a plan. We all have plans we don't go through on, So that's still one level. And then we have the next one where the person is like, no, writing goodbye letters, closing up all my personal business, giving things away. That's the person who is like, as soon as this is done, I'm going to go ahead and follow through, right? And so I go through that process to help people understand that just because you have the suicidal thoughts doesn't mean you're going to be placed in an inpatient psych ward, because that is one fear people have. If I say this, are they going to institutionalize me? Not immediately. And again, there's a lot of responsibility in our field that we need to take care of, is kind of clarifying that process. And that's something I talk to my patients about. Like, if you tell me that you're having suicidal thoughts, I'm not calling a car to come get you right now, right? We're going to talk about it. We're going to process it. And we're going to see what we can do instead before, because that is the last step, right? But there's so many more steps before that. And I think it's great how you kind of talked about that, and how it sounded like you were able to go home, see a therapist, go home, see a therapist, right? And so you still have some autonomy there. And so I think that's one fear people have, and they don't want to be honest about it because they're fearful that they will no longer have control of their lives. So thank you for bringing attention to that.
Appreciate it. And I think it allowed me to feel like I had someone to talk to during that time. And so it made the transition a lot easier. even though I didn't know the person, my therapist, like right away, but
Right.
the fact that she was there and allowed me to take my time to cry, to like feel the way that I felt, and then rush me through the process and made it a lot easier to go through
Yep. 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 I'm glad. It sounds like you had a great one. Good one. Good one.
it. Absolutely.
Um, Another thing you brought up was, you know, our past, right? The things that people say about us. And one thing I say is that, our past, your past does define you. It's a part of your story. But what I add is it doesn't confine you. You don't have to stay there, right? But the thing is, we can't erase what has happened. It is what it is. But we don't have to remain in that position. You
Agree.
are free to grow. You are free to develop. You are free to recover and heal. You don't have to stay in that position. And so I love that your mentor, he brought that up to you. And it's reminding you of everything. Because one myth of suicide is that the person doesn't care or they're selfish. And that's not it. Suicide, for the most part, is pain, overwhelming, excruciating, unbearable pain.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, people do try not to attempt suicide, right? That is not the first option. So, like, we have several steps in investigating suicide. People have several steps before they get to that point, too. But it didn't work out for them, right? It
Mm-hmm.
didn't give them what they needed. And I hope from this video that people can develop more empathy for that person. Because I used to work on a psych ward with a lot of people who attempted suicide. And one of the first questions I always ask is, did you really want to die? Or was it just too much?
Mm-hmm.
And I've never had a person tell me they really wanted to die.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're just like, I just couldn't deal. I just couldn't
Right.
do it anymore. Right? And so when you see it from that perspective, that person wasn't selfish, they were in pain. And like, this is the only thing that I think is going to stop my suffering. Um, and so, one thing I would like people to remember about that is empathy, being kind to others, supporting people, being there, being supportive, uplifting, because, like you just mentioned, it can build a person up.
Absolutely. Yep.
Now it can fill them up. So, I think that was everything I wanted to unpack. Should have taken notes, but I don't have a pen. One last thing. Okay. Signs of depression, right? So for you, sounds like you stopped eating as much. So your appetite can change. Sometimes you eat more, sometimes you eat less, or you don't eat at all. You lose a lot of weight, right? And it's within a short period of time too. So if you don't eat for a couple of weeks, then yeah, it's going to look much different than over the course of a year.
Mm-hmm.
Another one he said is laying in a dark room a lot. So isolation, not connecting with other people. Um, you said you didn't do much. Did you have any energy? You're tired a lot. Or felt heavy.
Yeah, a lot of heaviness. I didn't want to do anything. Literally, I mean, I didn't have the energy to do anything, and I was socially withdrawn from other people, and so just those two as well added on to what was just stated. Lack of energy, lack of wanting to speak to people. Even people in my family. What I mean, like I just kind of felt like it was embarrassing for me as a black man, and being able to see the statistics and of the divorce rate at the time, and here I am feeling like another statistic,
Yeah.
and that allowed me to just have that added weight packed on this heaviness of a backpack that I have on that's weighing me down, and so that was just added in bricks, added in over and over again, and it just didn't want to make and do anything.
So, a little bit more about the thoughts. What were some of the things they're saying to you?
Um, I would definitely say, um, my thoughts were, I just kind of felt like, again, worthless, but it was like a black cloud hovering over me at the time. It was just, I just had a visual of just like darkness.
Hmm.
It was just me, and they were just words of just coming at me back and forth, just everything. You're not nothing in life. You're not nothing. Um, you, you know, upbringing was right. Like all these feelings of emotions of my thoughts, of feeling like I didn't have anything, to me at least at that time, because I was in a new state. Um, I do have family out here. At that time, I just kind of felt like I did. Like
Hmm.
I didn't have like my immediate family. Like I didn't have my mom, I didn't have my dad, I didn't have my sister.
Right.
Um, in a physical standpoint, to be able to speak to them, and so um, again, it was just one of those mental things of just feeling like a dark cloud that was hovered over myself, and you get those warning signs like when it rains, right? You see the clouds coming,
Yeah.
and so and then you start to see the signs, right? You might see lightning, down the way, but it's not raining yet. And so what most people do when that happens is that they take cover, right? They're like,
Yep.
oh, I gotta hurry up, I gotta take cover. And then it might start to drizzle. So the rain is not there just yet in its entirety, but it's starting to slow a little bit, right? And so for me, that's kind of how the pain felt. It was like the clouds are hovering, so I felt that. Then the mental aspect of thoughts were the lightning piece of it. So it started like hit me. Then the tears started to flow slightly. So that was the drizzle. And then a more psychological cycle of things that were happening in my mind and my thought process, the rain started hitting harder and harder. Tears started going harder and harder and harder. The more that it rained harder, the more that I felt like a storm was coming. And the more that that felt to me, the more weight I felt that was shielded on me. Um, and so my thoughts were just, again, feeling isolated in a dark place with no one to speak to, no one to talk to at the time. And, um, it was definitely not a good place to be in. And, um, at that time, I really didn't have a plan. Just kind of pretty emotions. My thoughts were just like one of the things that you people experience when they feel worthless at times, and that's how I felt.
Hmm.
That was my thought process. That number one, um, I didn't have anything worth living for. I felt thoughtless. I felt embarrassed, um, and I just didn't want to exist in this world anymore. And so, even in the beginning, I felt that way. It still kept creeping in my mind over time. Even though I was still in therapy, it would come in my mind every blue moon.
Hmm.
Those repeated cycle of thoughts every time, probably like the first month and a half, it would come every now and then. So those were my like reoccurring thoughts all the time,
Yep.
and having that example of um, the rain and the clouds and the storms and the drizzle and heaviness that happens before a storm erupts.
Yep.
So those are the cycles that my mind was at the time consistently.
Mhm. So, for everyone listening, one common example I provide for how suicidal thoughts work is rain. So, some people, or a lot of people, say, "Oh, it rained out of nowhere." And when you think about it, that's not true. It didn't rain out of nowhere. There were signs, but you didn't notice them, right? So, common signs of rain we know are dark skies, it gets windy, it might get a little cooler. There's lightning, thunder, it might start to drizzle, right? So those are the signs that it's going to rain. And like Kenny said, people tend to take cover when they see those signs. It works the same for suicide. So if you're having suicidal thoughts, that's one way to kind of think about it. What are the signs that these thoughts are coming? So do I no longer want to engage with people, like Kenny suggested? Like, yes, you have family and friends around, but you really don't want to talk to them. Do you no longer want to do things? Does your interest in activities go down? Do your habits change, like eating habits, for example? Are you eating more than what's normal for you? Eating significantly less? Are you drinking more than what is normal for you, for example? Sleeping a lot more or not sleeping enough? Like you're laying in bed, but you can't get to sleep, or if you get to sleep, you don't stay asleep very long, right? So those are some of the warning signs, in addition to the thoughts that are coming in, and might have temper outbursts, for example, irritability. You may even cry sometimes. You don't know why you're crying. So those are some of the signs that suicidal thoughts are coming. But it will vary from one person to the next.
Absolutely.
So next question. We're going to wrap up soon. What would you have done differently? So knowing what you know now, right? Looking back on your journey, what would you have done differently?
I think it's important to take the time to understand the root cause of your mental self. Because there's things that a lot of people go through that are still dealing with things years later, sometimes decades later, and they've never felt the courage enough to speak to someone about it. Yet they hover over it and keep it inside of them for so long. Deep down inside, it hurts, and it sometimes enables a person to move forward in life from an overall health perspective, because they haven't had the courage enough to feel like they can speak to someone about it. Just like I was saying earlier about feeling embarrassed, that whole embarrassment feeling of whatever the situation is because people fear rejection. Especially for men, like we don't like rejection, period. And so, that people deal with those things. Number one, feeling like if I share my story with someone, I'm going to feel rejected, or they're going to say something negative to me.
Yeah.
That's going to make my mind revert back to what I'm dealing with again, or they're just not in a space mentally to share. And so I would say definitely understand what the root cause is, right? So I didn't understand the root cause of my mental state until after I was divorced and after, like almost a year later, that I was able to identify that past traumas growing up affected how I was as an adult in my marriage and even after for a little bit. And so you have to understand the root cause of why in your mind that makes you want to act on it, or even having a thought of suicide and then acting on it and possibly doing it for your own life. So it's important to understand the root cause of old issues that you might not have overcome from your past to be able to move forward. But for me, I was still dealing with the past trauma from teenager years, and here I am. I wasn't even 30 years old yet, but I was still in my late 20s during this time, and I didn't understand that at that time, things that you go through in the past can still reflect your outcome on life, even as you are in a functioning full adult. And so just understand the cause. When you start feeling those signs, reach out immediately. Help. Go ahead. If you're a working person, go ahead and reach out to your employment assistance program, or as they call it in certain fields. Reach out, use their assistance program if you're dealing with stress, or if you're having any mental breakdown, suicidal thoughts. Reach out to the resources that are available to you right away. Most companies are pretty good with supplying you with free services for X amount of time. And so I know at mine, in particular, I had like 3 free um, counseling sessions, and I took advantage of those 3 for free, you know what I mean? And then obviously I had to come out of my co-payments and stuff, which was fine because I knew that was something that I needed at the time. Yeah, definitely utilize those services, reach out, get help. Don't feel embarrassed about it. Try to think about like the positive side that you're going to feel after you get through the counseling and how stronger you're going to be as a person going forward. Then you could be like somebody like myself, being able to share your story of your overcoming and being able to be an impact to someone else's life. And you're definitely going to feel empowered being able to do those things. So, again, understand the root cause, utilize your resources, um, being able to identify that, and don't feel embarrassed. Like I said, like it's part of your DNA. It's always going to be a part of your story. We all have a story, but it's what you do within your story to overcome it that
Yes.
makes you better. And so, being able to help someone else by sharing it, um, it allows you to feel good as a person, and it allows the other person to be able to overcome whatever they're dealing with, and you get thanked later for being able to be someone else.
Thank you. Thank you. Very well said.
Appreciate that.
So, final question. How do you maintain your wellness?
Ooh, that is a great question. How do I maintain my wellness now? So, um, my daily routine is I'm naturally an early morning person, or a morning person, period, no
Wow.
matter how I go to sleep. Um, so, what I normally do is there's a few things. Um, Sometimes I hike in the morning. I live in Arizona, so hiking is very uh, a natural thing to do when you are a resident of a state such as Arizona that has mountains where you can hike. So I'm not going to really suggest that if you don't live in that type of environment. However, for me, it does help just to be able to get away from everything you see that's below you and to be able to go as high as you can in the air and be able to just redirect your energy to just the peacefulness that you experience, the peacefulness that you hear, the wind, the positive vibes that you get, being able to just close your eyes and just be able to focus on the positivity of things in your life. And sometimes you're able to connect with your spiritual being or your whoever is your power source. You're able to just kind of to speak to that and being able to just endure and bask in. You can take a seat. You can just relax your thoughts. Whatever's on your heart, just let it go. So that's one suggestion I do. But obviously, outside of that, if I'm like at home in the house, chilling in the morning, I usually I put on some music, some real soothing, easygoing music with no lyrics. A lot of times, um, and I write. I'm a journal writer. I write a lot every single day. The reason being is because it allows me to release what's ever in me at that time. Like no matter if it's positive, negative, if I'm feeling a negative vibe, if the energy isn't right, or even if it's right and I'm feeling like super great, it allows me to release whatever is in my spirit. It allows me to release whatever I'm feeling at that moment or whatever's been bothering you for the week. Like if it's something that's reoccurring, I'm still adding on to what was written previously until I feel in my spirit enough that I'm content or that I'm happy and this chapter is closed. Instead of bottling it up, when I was younger, I used to bottle things up, and I used to get to a point where like I would just get super incredible hog angry and release things. And so um, instead of bottling it up now, I just write. It's been definitely a healthy experience. I also have a recommendation of I have these cards. I don't have them with me, but I have what is called words and affirmations. daily affirmations that, every morning I wake up, pull a card, stick it wherever I am. I can stick it on my bathroom mirror. I can stick it where I'm working from home at. This reassures me of who I am as a person. Like, you can take it as however you want it, but for me, it's able to reassure me that uh, this is who I am today. Like, repeat these things to yourself. If you repeat something 3 times to yourself, you'll never forget it. And so, something my dad taught me when I was younger, when I was in college, learning about certain things, difficult subjects like a philosophy or theology or something like that, I was able to repeat things to myself multiple times to remember an answer when a test came or a final exam. So I never forgot how to do that. And the same is applied to words of affirmation. So words of affirmations are things that make you feel better. Words that makes you feel better. Words that you can repeat to yourself repeatedly to just give you some uplifting insight. So I do that. I do a lot of reading as well in the morning, whether if it's the Bible or I have a lot of self-help books that I read. Find an author that gravitates to you. Um, or you can even watch YouTube videos. I know Eric Thomas is pretty well known. I've known him before he got big. I recommend him. He's a really good resource. Dr. Miles Monroe, he's a really good resource. Rest in peace. There's a lot of people. John C. Maxwell that I recommend. There's a lot of people. So read books that'll make you feel motivated and make you feel good. Like, I feel like a lot of those things in the morning dictates how your day flows. And so, you can write journals. You can do outdoor activities that you like. It doesn't have to be hiking, but you can run, you can jog, you can walk. Um, you can also read. You can also. I highly recommend words of affirmation. Though, like, those things are critical, and I still use it today. And it's been 8 years since um, I've almost committed suicide. So I do the exact same routine every single day for the last 8 years, and it's benefited me through all these years. And then I will also say, do the things you love to do. Whether it's sports related, if you love to travel, whatever recreational things you love to do, travel, going to restaurants. I mean, just little stuff, hanging out with friends. I'm more of a soloist, to be honest. So I do a lot of things on my own, a lot of times. But just do something. Find things you like to do. Whatever you love to do, do those things. Don't feel hindered to not write your feelings out or say your feelings out loud. Find someone you can connect with on that level and be able to address what you're feeling at that moment. And so for me, I have all those things in place where it allows me to do those things when I'm feeling down and or feeling like I'm worthless on that day. It still happens, right? I mean, I'm human, so it's not like I'm sitting here saying I'm a perfect human being. By no means, I'm not, because I still have those days. I still have those moments. And whoever impacted your life during that time, I would say keep in contact with that person. I still keep in contact with my mentor, and I met him at 17 years old, and I'll be 37 in a couple weeks. So we're talking about 20 years here. And he works at Marquette too, so that makes it even better. Um, and so yeah, that what works for me. And I would just also recommend that you can try those things out, and it'll definitely make a difference. So um, yeah, so those things help me out.
Thank you. So the takeaways are get outside and do something, move your body, breathe, get some sun. Next thing, positive affirmations as much as needed, right? Daily if possible. Journaling, that's one of my favorite. Next one was see a therapist as needed as well. Support, maintain relationships, especially or more specifically, the positive ones. Did I miss anything?
No, you got everything. Yeah, do things you like to do.
Do things you
Read,
like to
I
do?
started reading as well, so reading too.
Thank you so much, Kenny. I really appreciate your vulnerability today to discuss a difficult part of your life, as well as taking us a walk through the journey in your wellness. So, for anyone who is looking for a therapist or you would like resources for suicide, please log to mindsovermelanin.com for more information.